What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. So last week I discussed the Texas Tech quarterback situation, Brendan Sorsby finally being allowed to participate in the 2026 college football season, and it was met with utter outrage, including myself. I am one of those people who I'm kind of like, it is what it is sort of situation, but as a collective, for everybody who's a fan of college football, everybody understands the implications of overturning the NCAA, not even necessarily overturning, but being granted an injunction on being able to play in the upcoming college football season. So Texas Tech, we're going to see how that plays out. Obviously, Brendan Sorsby suspended for the first 2 games. We're just going as it is right now. Unless something drastic changes, right now, Brendan Sorsby is going to be that starting quarterback for Texas Tech. So I got into the weeds about that entire situation. I gave my thoughts and opinions on it. So yeah, that was a very fun episode to do. And before we get started today, I want to give all praise, all glory to the one true God, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. I thank him every single day for blessing me with another day of life, for allowing me to do all these great things, allowing me to live this magnificent life that he indeed blessed me with. So I forgot to do that at first last week, so I did not forget this week. So as we dive in today, we're going to get into a couple new things. I wouldn't even say really a couple new things, but we're definitely going to talk about a different sport to start off the show. And we're going to dive into a little bit of NBA action as the New York Knicks, for the first time in over half a century, have been crowned NBA champions. It's been a long, long time since New York has been able to celebrate a championship like this. I think it's been over 15 years since the Giants' last Super Bowl, where all of New York would obviously celebrate that, but how about them New York Knicks, the number 3 seed in the East in this year's NBA playoffs, goes on a magnificent run and beats the San Antonio Spurs 4-1 in the NBA Finals. So obviously, everybody who watches my channel, I'm more of a football channel, more than anything, college, NFL, it don't matter. Football, is basically the main product on this channel. But I will dive into a little bit of NBA here and there, especially I want to say maybe a year ago when the Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis trade happened, and then a little bit before that when LeBron James' son was drafted by the Lakers, and I said how kind of awful that is, and realistically it's not going to go anywhere. So when I really got into watching the NBA, I don't watch it as much as college football or NFL. Football is my main sport, always will be my main sport, and there's no changing that. But every now and then I will dabble into a little bit of NBA. I try to keep up with it as much as I can, and then playoffs happen, and that's where I'm kind of mostly engaged about the NBA. I think it's just because of the sheer long season it is. 84 games. I believe it's 84. 86 or 84. I think it's 84 games. Regardless, baseball I can't get into until the playoffs. Hockey I can't get into until the playoffs. And NBA is the same way. But I do keep up with the NBA a little bit more periodically throughout the season as the season progresses, as playoff time approaches. But that's neither here nor there. So the New York Knicks capture their first NBA championship in over 50 years, half a century, and they beat the high-powered and young and talented San Antonio Spurs. I think the big story about this, as much as it is the Knicks, they're great. Jalen Brunson already probably stapled himself as the number 1 New York Knick of all time. Jalen Brunson is just absolutely special. In Game 5, he went 14 of 27 for 45 points and 4 for 7 from 3 and 13 of 15 on free throws. Like, Jalen Brunson, probably one of the best superstars that is not talked about enough in the NBA. Everybody's, Steph Curry, LeBron James, those guys, Luka Doncic, and now you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Victor Wembanyama. There is a lot of star power in the NBA. And I still think Jalen Brunson might be the most underrated out of all the superstars in the NBA. And then you got players like OG Anunoby, who just balls out everywhere he goes. Quietly has just been one of the most underrated players in the NBA for quite some time. Even during the Raptors 2019 finals run that they made and championship game that they ended up clinching that year, OG Anunoby was sensational for them. I think it was, again, this is how out of touch I am sometimes with basketball. I believe OG Anunoby was on that Raptors team that won the NBA title over the, aging, brittle Golden State Warriors. We all know if Kevin Durant played in that series, the Raptors probably would have got smoked, maybe 4-1, maybe 4-2 at best, but they wouldn't have beaten that series if Golden State was at full strength. And that's also when Klay Thompson basically derailed his career by tearing his Achilles, but that's neither here nor there. But the New York Knicks, I think that this was a special team, but I do think a good portion of this series can be summed up by the fact that, yeah, the Knicks were great, but the Spurs were generationally horrible at blowing leads. I don't understand how you lead by double digits in basically every single game, and you can't close out one single game. Obviously, they closed out one game. They won one single game in this series, but that was a 4-point win. That was a close win. Obviously, game 4 of this finals was absolutely immaculate. I mean, OG Anunoby's put back to as time expires and 1 second left on the clock is just unbelievable. Probably one of the best finals games I've ever witnessed in my life. Finals endings I've ever witnessed in my life. But, as much as the Knicks are great and deserve to be praised as such because they are such a great team, and I think Jalen Brunson, the fact that he turned down that mega contract that he could have been offered just so the New York Knicks could, build a team around him, and he just makes everybody better around him. I think Jalen Brunson, phenomenal top 10 player in the NBA, and this was a long time coming for the New York Knicks. This was such a long time coming. When I really was in tune with NBA, obviously, like a lot of people my age, I'm 26. My favorite teams to watch were the KD, Russell Westbrook, James Harden Thunder for that time. The Dwayne Wade and LeBron James Miami Heat. The Carmelo Anthony New York Knicks, Kobe Bryant Lakers. Those were the team, Derrick Rose Bulls. Those were the teams I grew up watching. That's when I was really in tune with the NBA. But yet again, I am old enough to remember all of these New York Knicks teams with Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire. Watching those teams, yeah, they were great in stretches. They were never able to get over the hump in the East. Never really be able to get past Boston. Never were really able to get past LeBron and the Heat, of course. And then overall, those teams just fell apart. Absolutely fell apart. Carmelo Anthony did not age well towards the end of his career in New York. He was bad a lot of the time. Towards the backstretch of of his New York Knicks days. But just seeing, if you told me 10 years ago that, this is during the Phil Jackson front office led Knicks, which Phil Jackson easily, you could make the argument that he is the greatest coach in NBA history. Flat out the greatest coach. I think he has, I want to say 8 championships, something in that realm. It's just unbelievable. Phil Jackson, as a coach, one of the greatest of all time. There's no disputing that. As an executive, one of the worst executives probably in NBA history. His time with the New York Knicks at that point in time when he was in the front office was putrid, was terrible, absolutely atrocious, and absolutely awful. To see the New York Knicks about 8 to 10 years later win an NBA championship, I would have told you you're crazy. If you would have told me 10 years ago that the New York Knicks would be NBA champions, I would have told you you're full of it. I absolutely would not believe you one bit. But here they are. They're at the top of the NBA mountain once again for the first time in over 50 years. Now let's talk about the Spurs a little bit, because I mentioned that as much as it's about the Knicks being good, and they are a great team, The Spurs blowing multiple double-digit plus leads and led as much as 29 in Game 4, and they blew it. I think that's partially coaching, and this is also the fact, like, I like De'Aaron Fox. I think he's a solid player. He's good. You would want him on your team for veteran leadership, and he's also a solid player. But he cannot be your main ball handler at the end of games. I don't know what it is with San Antonio thinking that, you got guys like Stephon Castle, who young and up ascending stars. Dylan Harper, young and ascending star. Why on earth is De'Aaron Fox your main ball handler and your main, like, kind of go-to option towards the end? Take Victor Wembanyama out of the picture, because that dude was playing all 45 minutes or 48 minutes or whatever. That they did not sub that dude out at all. By the time they got to the fourth quarter, Victor is just gassed. Like, he doesn't have anything left in the tank. Now, Victor Wembanyama is one of the best superstars that we have in the NBA currently. Even though they lost 4-1 in this series, I'm willing to bet Wembanyama wins at least 3 to 4 rings in his career. This is one of the youngest teams to have ever made the NBA Finals in general. Over the last, I think it's 20 or 30 years, this is one of the youngest teams. And Victor is I believe he's only in year 3. He's only going to get better. But for Wembanyama and his future, I'm not worried about the Spurs one bit. They'll capture their titles eventually. Coach Mitch Johnson, I think it's Mitch Johnson, they'll have their chance. I think that this was just destined for the Knicks. But if you have as much, Victor Wembanyama, I think he's 7'4" or whatever he is, handles like a guard, shoots like a wing, defends the paint like a big, because he is a big, like, he's the best big in the league by far. But he needs probably 10, 15, maybe 20 more pounds of muscle he's got to build, because when you put guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson on him, guys who are still not quite as tall as him, but physical, strong athletes that can just body Wembanyama in the paint. Victor, he uses his length and his, how tall he is to his advantage, as he should. But once you get a big that is super, super strong and athletic in the paint, you can neutralize Victor Wembanyama a little bit. But I think the big story with Wembanyama is just the fact that dude's gassed by the end of all these games. He was just flat out gassed, and there was not much left he had in the tank. So I think, I think this was just destined to happen. Me and my one coworker at work were talking. He was saying Knicks in 6. I was saying Knicks in 6. Well, guess what? Knicks in 5. Unbelievable year for the New York Knicks, the number 3 seed going all the way to winning the NBA Finals. I think Jalen Brunson has solidified himself as a true New York Knick legend. And of course, everybody's favorite commentator and ESPN First Take host, Stephen A. Smith, is probably the happiest man on planet Earth because of this. As much as Stephen A. Smith loves Alabama, and as much as he loves his Pittsburgh Steelers, that man is a die-hard New York Knicks fan. And the fact that he finally gets to celebrate a New York Knicks championship, I think, is just, good for Stephen A., good for New York. I couldn't be happier. I remember a long time ago, I rooted for the New York Knicks so much just because I loved Carmelo Anthony, and my favorite player of all time, Shane Larkin from the U, went to and played for the New York Knicks, I think, for about 2 years. So I was a big Knick guy then. And of course, that was during one of the worst stretches in New York Knick basketball history. But overall, New York Knicks, NBA champions, winning Game 5, 94-90, clinching the series 4-1. So now we're going to transition into the NFL, and we're going to talk about the NFL dumpster fire known as the Cleveland Browns. So we're just going to talk briefly about their quarterback situation. I know it's been talked about and done to death, but this is just something recently that we're taking a look, because OTAs, are in full swing. The Browns have a QB competition going on. Obviously, here's what's going on right now. You got Todd Monken at the new head coach of Cleveland after Kevin Stefanski's departure. So obviously it's going to come down to Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. Here's my personal take on this. There is no reason on earth why you should be starting Deshaun Watson at all. I do not care about these reports one bit that says that Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders are splitting reps with the first team. I don't get how you're going to do Shedeur Sanders like that. He's younger. He's more athletic. He's got a better arm. He's an overall better player than Deshaun Watson. I do not care one bit that Deshaun Watson is splitting reps and maybe looks good in practice and in preseason. Like, we've been showed this before. And I'm not a big fan of Deshaun Watson as a person or as a player or anything. Everybody knows the story with Deshaun Watson. But since signing that 5-year, I think it was $246 million contract, which fully guaranteed, by the way, because Jimmy Haslam is such a genius when it comes to dealing for the Cleveland Browns. I believe he has played 19 total games. Some NFL teams play 19 games in a season. You only play 17 regular season games now. Deshaun Watson hasn't even played a full season for Cleveland. He's played one full season worth of games in 5 years for Cleveland. Why on earth Deshaun Watson is even in the conversation to start this year is beyond me. He's in his last year of his 5-year contract, and of course, Cleveland is paying him a king's ransom worth of money to sit on and ride the bench. So I guess one argument is, again, you're paying him all this money, you might as well play him to see if you can get anything out of him. But injuries, inconsistencies, there's no reason that Deshaun Watson should be a starter in this league anymore. Heck, I don't even think he's a backup. Give the young guys on Cleveland a shot. I know they just traded away Myles Garrett. I know they're building towards the future. I know more than likely they're going to finish 4th in the division. More than likely they're going to finish bottom tier in the NFL again. Cleveland fans deserve so much better. As much as the championship in 2016 from the Cavs helped with LeBron, this city is craving for a Cleveland Browns Super Bowl. I really don't think I'm going to see that in my lifetime. There are plenty of things I didn't think I'd see in my lifetime. I didn't think the New York Knicks would win a championship. That's one of them, which, they just did. The Carolina Hurricanes, I didn't know if they'd ever win a title again, but sure enough, they beat my Vegas Golden Knights. So there's two of my favorite teams that lost in national championship / finals. You got the Miami Hurricanes losing in the national title game, and the Vegas Golden Knights losing in the Stanley Cup Finals. So two of my favorite sports teams losing in the championship game. That's fun. So maybe if it holds true, the Steelers will be next to make the Super Bowl and lose. So that seems like the trend right now. And who knows, maybe the Yankees make the World Series again, and then they lose. That's always a possibility too. So maybe all my favorite teams will just make the championship game and then lose and just choke it away. But if there's one thing Cleveland faithful is hoping for one day, that's a Browns Super Bowl. At some point, they deserve it. They really do. They deserve a Super Bowl so badly. They are so loyal, and they just get treated so poorly by this organization. They just get treated so poorly. I'm sorry, Evan. Sorry, guys. Sorry to all my Browns fans out there. Sorry to all my Browns friends out there. You guys deserve so much better. But back to Deshaun Watson, there's no reason that there should be. I didn't even read through this entire article that's on ESPN right now about the QB evaluation, saying that it's incomplete. It's complete for all the Cleveland faithful. It's complete for that locker room, I guarantee you. I guarantee you nobody in that locker room wants Deshaun Watson to start. Not one person in Cleveland I can think of. Not one Cleveland Browns fan I can possibly think of. And I work with a million of them. I work with a million Browns fans. Not one single one of them wants Deshaun Watson under center. Not one single one of them. Not one single Cleveland Brown fan wants Deshaun Watson under center. And I can't blame him. Even when he was playing, he was no good. Inconsistent as heck. And just overall bad. He is not the same quarterback. he's not even close to the same quarterback that he was with the Houston Texans. And he was pretty good in Houston. Multiple division titles while he was there. Never quite got over the hump in the AFC, but even so, this isn't even remotely the same quarterback. And of course, he's not even remotely the same person that he was. There's no reason Shedeur Sanders should be riding the bench this year. You have to see a full season with Shedeur. You have to see something with him. You have to see what he's got. Give him a full year, full go. The team is his. It can't hurt. I do think Shedeur Sanders, was I harsh on him coming into the draft last year? Cam Ward's got a lot to prove too for Tennessee. He's got a good coach now, I feel. Robert Saleh, I think he's a better coach than people give him credit for. With Brian Daboll coming in as OC, Brian Daboll got Daniel Jones to the playoffs in the NFC, in the loaded NFC. Daniel Jones and the Giants to the playoffs. So there's got to be something there for Tennessee and Cam Ward, which I think it'll work. But Cleveland, there's no reason Deshaun Watson should be even in consideration for the starting role. This is Shedeur Sanders' team. You have to see what you have in him. If he's no good this year, then you can adjust accordingly. You will more than likely finish at the bottom of the league. Deshaun Watson's gone after this year. There's no way they're going to retain him on the roster. And I think his career's effectively done after that, because I don't even think there's a team willing to put up with him as a, just in general, as a teammate. I don't think anybody's willing to pay him that more money just to, basically for who he is right now, which is a terrible quarterback with a troubled past, with basically troubled outside football life. So it is what it is at that point. But there's no reason Shedeur Sanders should be riding the bench this year. There's no reason for it at all. This is Shedeur Sanders' team, and it should be going forward. All right, so now we're going to transition back into college football, back into the main topic. So last week, I gave my, bold predictions, my ceilings and floors for most of the top teams in college football. I did say I would make a college football playoff bracket, but I'm still working out the kinks on that, so I'm going to do that next week. But to finish off today, I know it's a little bit shorter episode for this week, but we're going to talk a little bit about college football. We're going to talk a couple teams, some over-unders that I saw recently on FanDuel. And obviously today is Monday, June 15th. So all these odds are on FanDuel as of currently 1:43 p.m. Monday, June 15th. So right now, we're going to start with my favorite team. We're going to talk about the Miami Hurricanes. Right now, their over-under for the season is set at 10.5 wins. And if I'm betting on this, now I don't ever bet on my favorite teams, regardless of the sport. I will never ever bet on my favorite teams. That's just not what I'll do ever. But looking at Miami's schedule set at 10.5, you're telling me that Miami's only allowed to stub their toe once, and they would be, you'd be good to go hitting the over. Notre Dame, that seems like the most likely candidate if Miami was to lose this upcoming year. Miami has a very workable schedule. So, schedule as follows as is. At Stanford, Florida A&M, at Wake Forest, Central Michigan, at Clemson, Florida State, Pittsburgh, at North Carolina, at Notre Dame, Duke, Virginia Tech, Boston College. So, again, it would be natural for a lot of people to suggest that Miami would drop a game that they shouldn't. But I think overall, just based on what Miami did last year to finish off the season, heading to the national championship game and coming within a drive of winning the national championship, I think Miami is over the hump a little bit when it comes to those kind of games and situations where, they just leave everything on the table where they should have, the Louisville game last year comes to mind. The SMU game last year comes to mind where a blatant, terrible roughing the passer call gives SMU life, and then they end up pulling it out in overtime. Just looking at it, this is, from top to bottom, I have talked about that Miami is probably one, if not the most talented team in college football. that defensive line for Miami, I think, is going to be scary because as much talent as they lost on the offensive and defensive line side, they got 5 former 5-star recruits that are being plugged in to those positions. I think but it's either on the defense itself, on the defensive line itself, or combined, both offensive line and defensive line, that they have 5 former 5-star recruits that are being plugged in to start there. You know, most teams would dream of that. When it comes to the talent pool Miami has, they are going to be the most talented team on the football field, no matter who they go against. And that, I think, that includes Notre Dame. And for that game, honestly, that is such a coin flip. It's possible that we're going to look at Miami, you know, at that point in the season, come Saturday, November 7th, they might be looked at as, you know, the team to beat in college football. It very well might be Notre Dame that could be the team to beat in college football. Well, there's a plane or a helicopter above, so sorry about that. I have the window open because last week, if you remember, I told you guys it was just so hot in this room. But it's nice, cool 70-degree day today. Got the window open. Beautiful summer day. But either way, when it comes to the Hurricanes, their talent pool is unlike anybody else. And, you know, it's right up there with the best in college football. The Ohio States, the Oregons, the Notre Dames. You know, their roster is built for it. Mario Cristobal, if there's one thing I have faith in, is that he will consistently put out not even above average, but flat out good to great offensive line play year in and year out. That's his forte. He won 2 national championships as a player on the offensive line for Jimmy Johnson back in the 80s. You know, Mario Cristobal I think you can look at him as one of the best coaches in college football. I would easily put him top 5, and it's borderline top 3 for me. And that's not even me being a homer. If you look at what Cristobal has done over the past 4 years at Miami, it's unlike any Hurricane fan has seen in upwards of 20 years. Miami is going to be favored in basically every single football game this year. And even in Notre Dame, I don't know if they'll be favored in that game. But judging, you know, this is the way too early predictions, of course. It's quite possible that Miami could be, you know, looked at as the favorite in college football at that point in time. But if you're telling me that Miami's getting 10.5 this year, I'm going to go ahead and take the over just because they don't have necessarily the toughest ACC schedule. Yes, Clemson, but Clemson is, you know, they're hit and miss with Dabo Swinney now. Florida State is Florida State. We'll see. James Franklin taking over for, taking over for Beamer Ball at Virginia Tech, going back to his alma mater. I think Virginia Tech will be, you know, on the come up. You know, obviously it's just year 1, but we'll see how they go. But as far as the Hurricanes, this might be one of their most talented rosters that they've had in 20 years. And I've said that about last year, and I've said that about the year before with Cam Ward, Carson Beck. Now insert Darian Mensah. You know, the transfer from Tulane, transfer from Duke. Darian Mensah, I think, has the potential. By the end of this year, you could be looking at the University of Miami and be like, yeah, he might have been the best one to come through there. And that's high respect because you got Cam Ward who just came through here, you know, number 1 overall pick to Tennessee, and you have Carson Beck who came through here. Transfer from Georgia, who just led Miami to their first national championship game appearance in over 20 years. So the transfer quarterbacks have had such success being plugged in at Miami and playing. And obviously, Malachi Toney, arguably the best player in college football. You can make that argument. Probably the second best wide receiver in college football, but probably the ultimate Swiss Army knife. He can return, he can throw, he can run, he can catch. You know, he's just fantastic. So when it comes to the Hurricanes, they're set at 10.5 this year. I'm willing to take the over for the Miami Hurricanes this year in 2026. All right, so now I'm going to do the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And this is a massive, massive line. Usually when you get to the top end of college football, it's usually 10.5 sort of line. Notre Dame is at 11.5 right now, over under win total. So you're telling me they got to go undefeated in the regular season to hit this mark. It is so incredibly difficult to go undefeated. As good as Notre Dame is going to be, and Notre Dame is going to be good. Notre Dame will be in the college football playoff this year. I have little to no doubt about that. Now, if they lose 2 games, that's a different story. But set at 11.5, everybody's circling that Miami game. I just talked about it, talking about the Hurricanes. I'm going to talk a little bit about it with Notre Dame now. They're hosting. It's going to be a primetime game. South Bend, Indiana, when Notre Dame is rolling, is one of the hardest places to play in college football. That crowd is something special. I have been to South Bend. I have been to Notre Dame. I have went to one Miami game there. I believe it was back in 2015. That was when Deshaun Kaiser was the quarterback for Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame wasn't anything spectacular that year. They were still good, but that crowd was still unbelievably loud. And especially since this is an old rivalry renewed. But 11.5, I'm going to have to take the under. It is so incredibly difficult to go undefeated in college football. I think Notre Dame has all the capabilities to do so. But if you look at this paper soft schedule, they got 3 games on their schedule I'm looking at that they can lose. One of them, Miami, we all know, coin flip. Even all the big talk shows are talking about it. Joel Klatt literally just talked about it today that, that's a coin flip game. That will be a coin flip game. That's going to be one of the most anticipated games of college football in this upcoming season. But if you look at it, at BYU, I'm looking at on October 17th, that is not going to be a gimme. BYU will be a much better team than they were last year. Bear Bachmeier and Kalani Sitake have something growing there, and I think BYU, they can make a push for the college football playoff this year. I don't think the Big 12 is as Texas Tech dominant as you would like to think. BYU's got another year under their belt. I think BYU is more than capable of beating Notre Dame. Notre Dame will have to be locked in that day. At BYU will not be an easy place to play. Then they got Miami. And then 2 weeks after that, they got SMU. Rhett Lashlee has done an unbelievable job as the SMU head coach. Rhett Lashlee is, he got SMU to the college football playoff. He didn't win the ACC that year, but he got them to the college football playoff. So when it comes to that game, that's not a gimme either for Notre Dame. So I'm going to take the under just because of how difficult it is to go undefeated in college football. That's a big ask for any team in college and any team in general. And now there's a secondary part to this. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm worried. If you go 10-2 again, I'd be sweating. I'd be very, very nervous. If you lose to Miami and BYU, what is your other big win? If SMU has a down year, what is your big win? Wisconsin? Navy? Syracuse? This is a paper soft schedule. The only reason not everybody's hammering on Miami because of their soft schedule, which, Miami's schedule, it's one of the softer in the ACC, one of the softer in the country. You can make that argument, but they do play Notre Dame, which we know Notre Dame is a top-tier program. Miami's still in a conference. Notre Dame will not be playing conference championship weekend. So if they go 10-2 again, like last year, if there's another situation where they are on the outside looking in, what is their big win to differentiate themselves from a different team that might be fighting for the playoff? Like let's say it's an Ole Miss or a Texas A&M, an LSU, or an Alabama. What is their big win? What's their big road win? Like, at that point, they wouldn't have one, really. So, Notre Dame, this is a big, big year for you guys. But I will be taking the under just because 11.5 is steep. And now, we're going to talk about the Cornhuskers. Talk about a team that's long gone in college football. Theirs is 6.5. I have not seen a more brutal back half of a schedule in the Big Ten other than what I've seen this year. So 6.5. Their first 5 games, You got Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota, at Michigan State, and then Maryland. So you could easily be 5-0 up at that point. And then the gauntlet starts. Indiana, at Oregon, Washington, at Illinois, at Rutgers, Ohio State, at Iowa. Where's the wins? Rutgers? Maybe. I know it ain't going to be that easy playing at Rutgers. Illinois? Who knows how they're going to be without Luke Altmaier at quarterback. Even if, you got to guarantee at least 2 more wins in that back half of the schedule. You're not beating Indiana or Oregon or Washington or Ohio State or Iowa. Your best hopes are Illinois and Rutgers, and those are not going to be gimmies. Dylan Raiola transferred. Who's your quarterback going to be? One of the worst recruiting rankings in the Big Ten this year. I think they were dead last in high school recruiting in the Big Ten, which is so odd. This is one of the most storied programs in college football, and they have fallen so far, and I think the sport passed them up. I don't think they have the NIL deals that they can make. Matt Rule, not necessarily the greatest coach in the world. He had a couple great seasons with Baylor, proceeded to crap the bed in Carolina in the pros, and now hasn't really done much when it comes to anything at Nebraska. Nebraska at 6.5. I'm trying to be generous, but I can't find the wins. Where are the wins? You're not beating Ohio State. You're not going to beat Oregon. You're sure not going to beat Indiana, and you're not going to beat Iowa. So you got to hope that Illinois has a down year, or Rutgers is going to be down in the dumps. But even though those are not gimmies, and if you stub your toe early, Pat Fitzgerald's at Michigan State now, so he's more than likely to turn it around. Michigan State's win-loss total right now is set at 3.5. I'm taking the over on that. I'm pretty sure that it's not hard for Michigan State to win 4 games. So I don't know. I feel bad for Nebraska, one of the most storied programs in college football. They've fallen so far. I don't know where their way back up is. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Again, I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something, don't take for granted.